All right, rolling along. Here's a Jersey story that's a lot happier than the Giants one right now. Yeah. This one went a lot better. Even with all that happened, a lot better than what's going on with the Giants right now, a month into the season. Anyway, put that down for a second and welcome in our first guest of the day. He does a lot of NFL games. Wes Durham does call the Atlanta Falcons games on the radio. Also, he is the voice of ACC football in the primetime slot this season. Wes, great to have you in. And Paulie he contractually required me to say hello on his behalf to start the interview. So Paulie says hello, Wes. There's that gift for you.
Clearly, midday's not enough for him. He has to have remote salutations and greetings as well.
Yeah, he couldn't stick around the 5 more minutes to say hello himself.
Exactly.
He stuck his head in the door literally 5 minutes ago to tell me to say hello to you. So there's your official hello, Wes, from Paul.
Hey, thanks, Paulie. See you soon.
And that's a part of the main reason I had to get you on. I don't know if we're actually going to see you soon here, Wes. I'm looking at the schedule. I don't know if Cuse is getting a West ACC game this year the way it's breaking out, so I figured I'd dial you up today.
It's interesting. We were kind of pontificating in our production meeting earlier today about where we might go in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, we're going to Duke next week for the Blue Devils and Wolfpack. And, obviously we missed the shot to see Coach Babers in the Orange this week in Chapel Hill. You got a bye week on the 21st at Virginia Tech on a Thursday night. You host Boston College on a Friday in November. So now all of a sudden we're down to like the last 3 throws of the game, right? I mean,
and you won't be at the Pitt game either. That's already locked in as a 3:30 game at Yankee Stadium. They haven't TV, so it's either Georgia Tech or Wake Forest. It's the last 2 games.
Yeah,
it's their only shots for you.
I got to be honest with you. The 18th in Atlanta doesn't sound bad.
Home game for you.
Yeah. And I think that's the Falcon bye week, so a really big home game. Could be, if I don't have to get on a plane, that is the bye week. Holy cow, that would be that'd be a double win for your boy. So, but more of my personal agenda later, as they say, right, Brian?
Well, I say, no, this is very important. This is more important than the rest of it. We want to get you on one of the games, and that would work out well for you. I did want to ask you, I mean, you haven't been doing the primetime games. You've been generally doing earlier in the day games. How the heck are you pulling off travel with primetime games and then doing NFL games the next
Hopefully, folks like you don't bring up bad omens. Bill Roth brought it up last year, and I missed my first Falcons game in 19 years.
Oh, boy.
So, essentially, the way it works is that I am on the first flight out the next morning to wherever the Falcons may play. The good news is, with the exception of November the 11th or November 12th is the day of the game, Atlanta does not play west of the Mississippi this year. I did not do the Saturday night game last week, which was Virginia Tech Pitt. Mike Monaco filled in while I was in the UK to do Falcons and Jags the next day, but that's essentially the way it works. The commercial airline industry is friendly enough, and if it gets a little tighter than that, we deal with it in another way. But elsewise, it's worked out well so far. And knock on wood or whatever your favorite countertop is. Hopefully, the flights keep going on time and they go correctly, as they say.
No, easier to do flying into Atlanta, I'd imagine, a lot of the time than if you were trying to get to Cuse on a Sunday morning would be less possible. You were in London last week. Have you escaped? Did you get out of Andy's room? Did Drew Carter lock you in there? What was it like being at the game where they were doing all that stuff?
Well, Drew and I texted back and forth a little bit last week because he was trying to get all the personnel straight. And then somebody said, "Don't you think this would be a good idea?" And I said, "Yeah, but Drew Carter is the exclusive voice of Pixar football on ESPN Plus. I mean, he's signed up for that deal now completely because, he's young enough and all those things, and he looks good in animation. He doesn't look old, haggard, and tired like I would, or, that kind of deal. So good for him and a great deal. And apparently it was well received. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see it again somewhere down the road in a different kind of variation. You might see it in the NBA, I guess. But, we're finding out, Brian, I think, in this world that we're living in now, that second screens are real. There was a research done a few years ago that I was shared with that somebody told me that 62% of people watch college athletics or watch any kind of live sports with a second screen up. And that could be for social media. It could be for, stats. It could be for anything. But 62% of the American public was using a second screen during live sports. And if that's the case, then, we need to be thinking a little more expansively rather than drawing into the narrowness of it. We need to start thinking about things like that. And certainly that was one of those on Sunday. And then, of course, Sunday Night Football became a social media thing because the Chiefs are playing. And whenever the Chiefs are playing now, it's a social media thing. It's, now we've got people who are giving us overnights on women watching football, which is tremendous. My daughter at 24 is a huge Taylor Swift fan, so she called last night to see if the Falcons played the Chiefs at any point, and I said, no, I'm sorry they don't. But, that's part of the attraction of social media and people's personal lives, I guess, at this point, too.
I guess I should have done this for you, Wes. I do have on my button bar here. I could have done my Taylor Swift rejoins into your segment, but that was for a different day on the show.
You'd be breaking news for me, Brian. My daughter went to the show in Nashville this year, the Rain Show, I'm being told by the Swifties, which was a monumental show, first one in the rain. And I had a bunch of people tell me, oh, that was like this unbelievable show. Well, that was the one my daughter saw. And everything I learn about Taylor Swift, I learned from my daughter. Let's put it that way. I couldn't name 3 or 4 songs. Iron Eagle already cut me on dropping song titles in games for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you talk about the Andy's room thing with Toy Story. Go figure. This is what Syracuse does. Like Drew Carter, who did that game, he's the same graduating class as Noah Eagle, who does the Nickelodeon slime game. So that's
going to do the Super Bowl, Brian.
Yeah,
the Super Bowl on Nickelodeon. Yeah, it's unbelievable. That guy's crossing networks. Yeah. He's already accomplished one thing that hundreds of us, thousands of us in this industry can't do. He's working for 2 of the 3 major networks in one swing. I mean, he's doing NBC, and now all of a sudden at the Super Bowl, he's going to get to work for Warner Brothers Discovery. I mean, who pulls that off?
I don't know. He's only like 25 or 26. It's sickening is what it is, Wes. It's unbelievable what these young guys are doing. We had, Noah did the Cuse game a few weeks ago, so we had him on talking about all that. Fun to see these guys out there making it happen. All right, enough shop talk for now.
Sure.
Or maybe not. I don't know. But let's get into the ACC. What are you feeling, Wes? And I know you haven't had a Cuse game yet. What have you made of the Cuse so far?
All right.
4-1. Had a half a chance against Clemson. What are you feeling about Dino Babers' squad?
To me, it's eerily similar like last year, but I think the schedule on the back end, while there are some challenges, you talked about the game at Yankee Stadium. There's obviously, but you've played Clemson. You've got some other tests along the way. But the thing about it is you've stood up and done this again. I mean, you've now put yourself in a position you can kind of see what they learned a year ago from that stretch, right, Brian? That's the way I would look at it. And here's the other part, too. I'm impressed with the guys that after the Gadsden injury occurs, I mean, there's every reason to just fold it up, right? But I didn't see that. They went to Purdue, put on a hell of a show in beating that squad, and I thought that was a terrific win, not just for Syracuse. I thought it was a great win for the league. I guess the question I'm asking is, can they stay healthy enough to be a factor in this? Because the loss is not a bad loss. I mean, it is a bad loss in that it's your first loss and it's a home game. But at the same time, you're still very much alive in this. You're more alive than the team that beat you Saturday at this point. But you've got some challenges that await you. So process what happened on Saturday and make it a positive for your team moving forward. And I think this group, and you know what I mean by this probably better than anybody else, this group probably has a better makeup to handle that right now than the group last year. Because last year it all happened, then it started to fall, and they couldn't recover from it. Now it feels like they have the wherewithal, perhaps depth-wise and certainly from a talent perspective, maybe to make a go of this. And look, I think the lack of the divisions right now is a benefit to a lot of these teams that are in the mix. I think it's a benefit to Duke, who lost Riley Leonard probably for a month, is my guess, maybe a little longer. Who knows? I think it's a benefit to even some of these teams. I'm going to see Miami Saturday night. Miami's win over Texas A&M didn't look great in week 2, and it's getting better by the week now because A&M is actually showing a pulse in the SEC. And I think the lack of division play as we get to conferences, at conference play, the lack of divisions in terms of determining who goes to Charlotte is going to be really beneficial for the ACC.
Yeah, if it was divisions and it was the same exact thing, the last decades, we'd already be kind of, hemming ourselves into, all right, we got Florida State over here and what's happening over there. Now it's like, well, FSU, but Louisville, right. If Clemson wins out, then Carolina and Miami, what can Duke do? It feels, you're right, Wes, it feels a lot more wide open for one. And it's given it, I don't know about you, it's given it a more fun vibe to me this season in the league, especially, for covering Syracuse this whole time when you were trapped in Clemson's division. You're like, well, okay. Let's see. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, there's nothing you can do.
Well, and let me give you an example. How do you think Louisville feels today? Louisville feels a hell of a lot better than they would in their most normal circumstances, and they're the ones who we can easily say they don't play Clemson, they don't play Florida State, they don't play Carolina. Well, guess what they do? They play Miami, who, by the way, at least for this point of the conversation, is a factor in this. And they've got to prove Saturday night against Georgia Tech that they're not going to have a Miami moment. And you know what the Miami moments are. You start, you lead everybody to this concept, and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out. And Brent Key's team, for example, in Atlanta, did it twice last year. They basically took Pitt out the first game he was the interim coach, and at the end, when Carolina had a modicum of chance to be involved in the CFP and in the New Year's Six situation, they beat Carolina in Chapel Hill. And so that's kind of where this league is. We wanted to get through September in a positive mark. We did that. Syracuse contributed to that concept. Now we get into October. If too much cannibalization occurs, though, it will distract us and probably mean that we don't have as impactful football in the month of November. So that's what we've got to watch for here. How many teams can we keep alive in this? Who can avoid the stunning or staggering upset of one of these top teams? I mean, look at what the Pac-12 is getting ready to do. I mean, the Utah loss the other day is a bad loss for Utah, but it's a bad loss for the Pac-12 because it eliminates a team, if you follow me, from the chance to now they can still get to the Pac-12 championship game, but it's a push whether or not they can be one of those teams, in the Final Four. And that's really what we're playing for after all.
No, that's what we've seen in the Pac-12 the last however many years. I mean, Utah specifically, they've won 2 straight Pac-12 titles and have had zero chance to make the playoffs. So we'll see. Obviously, FSU's in, I don't know, the lead spot right now,
sure.
Wes, because undefeated, beat Clemson, beat LSU in week 1. Do you think they are definitively the best team in the league right now, or is the gap small in your mind from them to those other top contenders?
I think the gap between Florida State and Miami at this point, I mean, I've watched 2 Miami games, Brian, in preparation for Saturday night, and I'm as impressed with Miami as I've been with Florida State. I think the one thing about Florida State I learned, not just in the LSU game, but really in the Clemson game is that Florida State played with poise and composure at Clemson. In the past, I think Florida State might have panicked a little bit. They did not panic. They got a big play, obviously. Bethune makes a huge play. The idea that they would panic and kind of be frenzied and hurried all in the second half didn't happen. So Mike Norvell's message and his building process had taken place. I'm starting to see similar characteristics of Miami. I mean, Miami's 2 weeks ago playing Temple in front of you, me, Paulie, and the people you can get off the street down there by the square, okay? And they're playing at Lincoln Financial.
I can get some people out there.
I know you could.
We got some people.
Well, then you would top the crowd they had at the link. But Miami had every reason to go in there and mail it in, right? Maybe have what my dad used to call the old El Dos Cerrito. You just go in there and you kind of sleepwalk for a quarter and a half. Next thing you know, you're in a fight. Miami took Temple out. Miami went in there on a mission, and they showed me an edge of maybe not being what Miami's been in the past. I think Carolina is ascending. I think the team Syracuse is going to see on Saturday, it's a little different in that they had a week off, probably needed it for health reasons as much as any. They are better on defense. That's not to say they're the 85 Bears. They are better. They've got playmakers on defense. They're deeper on defense. Where they really get you is the run-pass balance. Last year, I thought they were quick to get away from the run game. Now they've got Amarian Hampton and British Brooks, really, who are the 2 guys that I think they lean on in the run game. And Drake May's still Drake May. And he's got weapons on the perimeter, and now Nate McCollum has come in, and in the last 2 games been a real threat to him. But I think Carolina's in that mix. And I still believe, even though they lost to Notre Dame Saturday night, Brian, I still think Duke is kind of in this. Now they're going to have to get through some stuff without Riley Leonard. That's a terrible loss for them. For like I said, I think it'll be about a month, maybe longer. But I think for Duke to be able to kind of stay with it and hold the rope a little bit, it's going to be interesting to see how Henry Belin handles that for them at the quarterback spot next Saturday night against NC State after their bye week.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with you, Wes. Wes Durham is our guest here of ACC Network. In many ways for Duke, the injury to Leonard was worse than losing the game on Saturday because of not an ACC game, how it's affecting your chances going forward. You got the best quarterback you've had in who knows how long, and the best situation you had in who knows how long. You know, Wes, when I'm looking around this league, and I'd say the common denominator in what we're talking about in the top teams of the league this year is the volume of talented veteran quarterbacks that have started a ton of football games in this league. You know, Jordan Travis and Van Dyke at Miami and Louisville. It's not new to them, but they bring in Plummer. You mentioned Leonard, Drake May, Garrett Schrader, and like that's a pretty solid, what I say, 6 or 7 quarterbacks that are leading the ACC this year.
You know, I've already had 2 quarterbacks in games that are older than 9 starters in the NFL, Brian.
Wow.
I had
that's crazy.
Phil Dracovic at Pitt is older than 9 starters in the NFL. And so is I had Casey Thompson, who started originally, I guess, at Texas and went to Nebraska and whatever. He's at Florida Atlantic. They played Clemson. He's older than 9 starters in the NFL. If Sam Hartman were playing at Wake Forest for the year he had left instead of going to Notre Dame, Sam Hartman be older than 6 starters in the NFL. I mean, it's just where we are right now, and we're getting ready to cycle out of these bonus years the NCAA handed out, these coupons, if you will. But the quarterback position is one that's being asked to deliver a lot, and right now in this league, I think it is. I think the other thing about it is this league, much to the chagrin and dismay of the national folks, has gotten better. And I think that's a reflection of the coaching. I think it's a reflection of the longevity of the coaching. I mean, Cristobal, to be as good as Miami is right now in his second year, Elko winning 9 in his first year, those might be outliers to the building process that's happened at Wake or at NC State or, Brent Pryce in the struggle bus a little bit. They won the other night. Pat Narduzzi's 8-9 years in at Pitt. They're obviously fighting it now, losing 4 straight. But in reality, that's right. We've got older players at a lot of positions here, and I think it's an interesting dynamic that this league is unique to have.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys are still here because the red shirt or the COVID or now sometimes you got a red shirt sophomore and it's his 4th year. It's like what that math doesn't quite add up. But that's what we got here at this point. Going forward here, Syracuse has FSU next week, Carolina this week. What do you make of FSU? Do you think they are legit back enough that they could contend for the national title this year?
Yes, I do. I think in fact, it was like in this production meeting we're having this morning, we were going through a lot of things. I think the irony of potentially getting the game we thought we were all going to have for the last 20 years, and now we're staring Miami and Florida State in the ACC championship, right? We're staring it twice in like 4 weeks, when they play in the regular season, and then 3 weeks later, I guess, would be Charlotte. But the idea of that happening, I think Florida State's more than capable. And I'm probably one of the few people that thinks they're a lot better on defense than they are on offense. I think they're good on offense. I think they've got depth. I think they've got playmakers. I think Keon Coleman is special. They throw the ball to 3 tight ends a game and have no problem whatsoever. And 2 years ago, they didn't have any tight ends. Mike Norvell has taken complete advantage of the portal. Let's put it that way. And to his credit and to his stick-to-itiveness, when I had them 2 years ago and they lost on the Hail Mary to Jacksonville State, Brian, to think they've gone from that 2 years later to being one of the top 5 teams in the country and kind of built to endure this season, it's a remarkable statement about his commitment to doing it the right way and willing to sit through the tough spots in the road, and give him credit for that, because I think he's a terrific coach. And I think that's the other benefit this league has. We got a lot of really good coaches in it. And some of them have been, willing to fight through the tough part here. And Mike Norvell certainly is one of those guys, because I think when he got to Tallahassee, it was an absolute mess in every potential way you can think of from a football perspective, based on what you thought they were to what reality was for them.
Yeah, I think that was a bigger mess than anyone realized. Anyone could have realized. I still go back to, it was the Cuse game in Tallahassee 2 years ago. I think that, honestly, I'd say that day was their turning point, because Jordan Travis was about to get benched, maybe.
Yep.
And then he goes out and has an unbelievable game. The Syracuse fans are still angry over the penalty in the last, the penalty and the not penalty in the last drive.
Sure.
That's neither here nor there.
Right.
2 years later, Wes. But it felt like that day, Travis since that day has been the dude, right? And he's they got one of the top guys in the country now.
Yeah, and he's very capable. I think his health is I think his health's been questioned a little bit, obviously, after the shoulder injury at BC and the way he played against Clemson. But I think Jordan Travis he's an electric football player. He's the spark that kind of sets him off offensively. But I will tell you that I think everybody needs to double check what they're doing on defense. I mean, it's Braden Fisk to me, the transfer from Western Michigan, is the guy you got to keep an eye on, because I think he sets up Jared Verse and these other guys to rush the passer. 55 is his number. And to me, he is like golly, I'm going to heap way too much praise on him here. He's like an Aaron Donald or Grady Jarrett who plays for the Falcons. Donald is more of a presence. Jarrett is a guy who eats up a guy and a half on every snap in the NFL, just like he did at Clemson. And I think Fisk is that guy for Florida State. Because of who he is, he creates opportunity for other guys around him. And I think he's really kind of the guy that – and then you got Bethune and these guys that are making plays at linebacker for them. And the secondary has held up. I mean, it's played better than I think most suspected. And but defensively, I think right now they're really kind of doing a pretty good job for Adam Fuller, who is a terrific defensive coordinator.
That is high praise if you're breaking out Aaron Donald,
well,
not just the NFL
He's
stuff.
the same kind of build, and he's got the eat-up factor. When I say eat-up, he takes like a guy or two on every snap. And I think if you've got a guy like that in your defensive front, it allows everybody else to kind of, blast off to rush the passer, gap the run, whatever the case may be.
I say Pitt, Donald's last year won a 1-point game in the Dome that year, and I think Donald was worth at least like 15 points by himself. I don't know what he was doing. It was for one, literally he blocked an extra point in the game. That was the difference of the game. But he did 38 million other things. It's a nightmare 10 years later, Wes. All right, man. Always great to chat, Wes. Enjoy Miami.
Hey, how you feel about Michael Jones going to the Cowboys? Huh? You're pretty excited about that, huh?
I'm happy for Michael. I don't like the Cowboys. I wish he went somewhere else. I'm glad he's employed. How about that?
Hey, let me tell you a guy. Let me give you a former Orange player who is coming into his own at the next level. Melifonwu in Detroit he's starting to play really better. Starting to make some noise. Really starting to handle it pretty well. So good for him and good for Syracuse fans to have some guys on Sunday that are having their name called.
I failed to ask you, how's our guy Bergeron doing down there with the Falcons?
I talked to him in London the other night for a few minutes. He's doing very well. It's, as you might imagine, a little bit of drinking through the fire hose, as they say, right? Going from Saturdays to Sundays. And he has seen some hombres, as they like to say. But I think Matt's going to be fine. He is, I tell you, the one thing that really has benefited him, Brian, in Atlanta was his ability to play a lot of positions when he was at Syracuse. To play tackle, to play some guard, even what he have a couple handfuls of snaps at center at one point, I guess, right? Somewhere along the way.
Yeah, he got moved around a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's really helped him, and that's really impressed Dwayne Ledford, the offensive line coach of the Falcons. And I think part of the reason he won the job was because he's a quick learner, and he'll get the physical part worked out. That's not going to be an issue for him.
All right, just find him a good poutine spot for us in Atlanta. He'll be okay. That's his fuel. Yeah. He's a good Quebec guy. That's his fuel. Yep. All right, Wes.
Take care,
good
Brian.
Stuff.
Thank you, man.
Always good to talk.
You bet.
Wes Durham. Hopefully we get a Wes game some point this season for the Cuse, but if not, we'll be watching ACC Network primetime on Saturdays to get our Wes fix. With that, we're comically behind, but that's what happens. Make sure you join us for Orange Avenue, our full day of fun on all of our stations. TK right here, QSportsTalk.com, ESPN Radio, Thursday, 9 to 6. All of it brought to you by Matthews Hyundai of Syracuse. Matthews Hyundai of Syracuse. Back after this, QSportsTalk.com, ESPN Radio.